Welcome to Faith in Five with Cecil and Cecil. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we're so glad that you're here to fellowship with us. Welcome back to Faith in Five, and today is one of my favorite series that we're kind of starting out, even though we've only done a couple of these. Today is going to be our second time that we've looked at the book Bible Questions and Answers by Cecil Jr. And so this is my grandfather, C3's dad, who wrote these over time as he answered questions that people wrote into the Magnolia Messenger, and then they were combined into a book that is available. But we're going to read so what we're doing is we're reading a question from the book without having read the answer, and then we'll both answer it, and then the following week we'll go back and look at Cecil Jr.'s answer and see how we compared. And so I know the question, but I don't know the answer to as we do these. So I'm going to read the question. I'll let C3 answer, and then I'm going to take then I'll answer it in my own way with some of my own experiences. But this one should be an interesting one. So this one is from page 287, and it's a question that's kind of under the section questions about Christian living. So the question that was submitted was, is it essential that Christians fast, or is it optional? Does fasting provide more spiritual power and strength? So I'm going to let you answer it, and then I'll answer what I think about that.
Okay. So is fasting essential or optional? And I try to answer this how I answer it and just compare later what Dad's would be.
Same.
But I am a little prepared to say about I don't ever remember my dad fasting. So if it was but on the other hand, Jesus' instruction about fasting in the Sermon on the Mount was not to let people know you were doing it. And so it would be just like him if he did fast, not to, let that be known. I wouldn't know about it. But fasting, there is no command in the New Testament to fast, but there's an assumption that you will be fasting. When Jesus addressed fasting in the Sermon on the Mount, the way he put it was, well, when you fast, do it this way. He didn't say to fast, or he didn't say if you fast, but he just assumed you would be fasting. So when you fast, do it this way. So there is some option to it. One of the things I'm pretty sure that Jesus would point out is that I think the Pharisees in particular did put some specific restrictions on fasting and would have some commandments about when to do it and how to do it. And so Jesus didn't take that route with fasting about, you must do it at this time on this day in this way. But he did assume that God's people would fast from time to time for different reasons. And yes, some of them because in our weakness, we're strong. And so when we learn that lesson, that in our weakness, then we're strong, then by fasting, we tap into the weakness, which helps us to tap into God's strength. I think that would, so it's optional in the sense of there's no commandment, there's no structure about it. But yes, it is something that does bring spiritual strength when we go about fasting the way that Jesus says it should be done.
You transitioned that so smooth that to answering both of those questions that I barely realized that's what you were doing. So that was good. Yeah, I think. Are you done, or do you have more?
I am done. Yeah.
I think. First of all, to say it's, hopefully I don't get too emotional saying this about Cecil Jr., but thinking about you saying that would be just like him to fast and then have not ever said anything about it. One of the things I learned about him after he died, I think maybe you told me, and then I heard lots of other people say something similar to this, but I never knew or never heard him talk about all of the single moms and young teenage girls that were pregnant, that were kind of shunned by others of the Christian community, and then how he provided for them housing for some, just kind of running point for complaints about the positions they were in the church for them without them knowing maybe or them finding out later that he was doing that. So yeah, you're right. It would be just like him to fast and then not ever
Yeah.
tell anybody to make a big deal out of it. So, but me answering this question, I can tell you from personal experience, Emma took on intermittent fasting mostly for health at first, and it has helped her in her health journey. But it did transition to power and strength in her spiritual life, and so I do think that there's power there. And is it optional? I think probably it is optional. I guess there isn't a command, so I guess you would have to say technically the answer is it's optional. But if it provides you that power and strength, a lot like maybe baptism of showing your confession and that expression of being saved and getting saved, it leads me to believe that this may be something similar to where if you do believe in God and you do believe in Jesus, then you're probably going to fast. And so I think maybe that's it's something that I probably should think about more and try to implement more in my life. I think you hear things now about different diets and fasting having so many health benefits, and Emma and I have talked about God knows those health benefits, and without spelling it out for us. There's a lot of sicknesses that can be at least helped, if not overcome, through fasting. And if it is some type of autoimmune disease, some people that have fasted or at least gone on a strict diet have been able to help that out a lot. And so I wonder how much, things like that God tells us to do that do bring us stronger and closer to Him. Some of it may also be a good just for us health wise so that we can be a stronger Christian. I think we've talked about in one of our other episodes. I can't remember, maybe you remember the exact application, but I was saying that one of the things I had learned or had thought about that was that, God has us do certain things so that we can perform for Him. And so I think maybe, some of the health benefits that you get from fasting, it could be that is part of being a healthier person so that you can go do the things without worrying about your health, to go do other things. So I don't know if that's maybe putting too much on, the more, what it does for me side to it. I'm sure Cecil Jr. has a great answer for how powerful and strengthening it is without it being optional. I'll bet that's his answer. But I don't know. What do you think about those things, the health benefits that it can provide? God wanted His people to do those things, especially the chosen people in the Jewish lineage of the Old Testament. He wanted His people doing that. So I don't know. What do you think about that as far as it providing things for us that maybe is really just now coming to popularity amongst mainstream people, trying to get people to do intermittent fasting and that kind of thing?
Yep. I look forward to reading Dad's answer and see how he approached it, what he had to say about it. I was just thinking about how, yes, is it optional? Well, maybe we get to some circumstances in our life where we can't help but fast. We just can't eat at that moment, and it may be a desperate kind of moment. So we're driven to fast, and so we have to, in that sense. But then also we might learn from that to embrace fasting as a regular spiritual discipline, which may keep us out of some of those times of desperation. So maybe, so there's the benefit, that there's the transitional benefits that you talk about.
Yep. All right. Well, a week from now, we will share what Cecil Jr. wrote, and we'll see and compare that to what we had to say today. So thank you for joining us. It's great, again, for me and C3 to bring Cecil Jr. into this, and just remember that we had a great example to live by that's really led us to be able to do these podcasts today, honestly. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be doing these. But anyway, this is great episode. Thanks, everyone, if you listened.
Yep, thanks.